Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Elishewitz and Les George EK Integral, oh beautiful, folder. This is modeled after the EK dagger. It's just a folding version. Obviously, there's some aesthetic differences here, but wow, talk about something that was right up my alley, not just in terms of the designers, but the overall profile, the fact that it's an integral. As a collector enthusiast, this definitely piqued my interest, and I am so happy to share this with you guys. Thank you so much to Elishewitz for allowing me to share this with everybody today. I've seen them drop at a few different retailers. I'm going to try and link where I've seen them drop down in the description. I can't guarantee availability, but you can check if you'd like. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and measure this knife. The overall length of the EK folder is coming in at, oh boy, 8.5 inches, bigger than I think some people might have expected. Blade length is coming in at, I'm going to call that about 3.8. Cutting edge is about 3.65, so pretty darn good ratios. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found in the description under Original Goat and others. So up against the 8010 and the AD 20.5, you can see what I mean here. It's not nearly as robust as something like the AD 10, but in terms of length and especially cutting edge, I think it's actually about identical to the 8010 in terms of cutting edge. Much sleeker though, and obviously substantially larger or longer than the AD 20.5. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? As you can see here, it is similar in overall length to the Spyderco PM2, definitely a little longer and way more cutting edge, obviously much longer than the PM2. And then last but not least, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. There we go. So how's the action? So these are made by Quechua, which is the only reason that the knife costs as little as it does. And when I say that, I know that there's going to be some people confused because they're going to have already gone to the link and they're going to go, whoa, that's an expensive knife. Oh my gosh. If you know, this is one of those situations, if you know, you know. This is an integral knife, meaning the frame is not two separate pieces of titanium held together with standoffs or a backspacer. No, it is a single piece of titanium. The entire frame is milled from a single block of titanium. I know you're wondering why the screws. The screws don't actually do anything, and we'll get to that. But the frame is just one piece of titanium. This is way more expensive to do, and you can, you feel free to just search around the internet. You're going to find very quickly that the lowest priced integrals are all right around the same cost as this guy, which we'll also talk about. Some a little bit less, but most of them more. If they were to make this knife, I know a lot of people say, well, Elishewitz and Les George, why didn't they make that in the United States? I'll give you two big reasons. Number one, the cost would be crazy. The cost, I would say, we'd be lucky to see it for $750, probably $800 plus. Realistically, it could approach $1,000, right? A lot of people are going to say, oh, no, he's just beefing that up. If you can find, some more American integrals out there that have as much complexity, there are some companies creating some American integrals for some, impressive price tags. But this guy is going to be north of $750. I feel like I can say that confidently. The other huge problem. Here's the other huge problem. These things are already selling out lightning fast. If they made them in the United States, not only would they cost more, they would be almost impossible to get. They would be able to make substantially less, and the extreme collectors would buy them up immediately, which would basically just be annoying to everybody else who's trying to get them. So these are actually semi-obtainable because of their choice to allow Quechua to manufacture them. As somebody who has reviewed many Quechua/Reich products, I can tell you that their ability to execute something like this is top notch. They're able to do it, and this is exemplified in this form. It is very, very good. So Anyways, action. We don't have much access to the lock bar. It's a little bit of a pinchy zone. And here you can easily get in there and do it, but it's less accessible than, some models that have this area cut out here. I think that probably would have been a good idea, but then again, it would have taken away from the whole design aesthetic that they're trying to achieve here. The idea here was to imitate the EK dagger, right? So they went with form. In my opinion, it looks like form over function, while function is still definitely an element here. It's just that form is more of an element. So this is more of a designy knife than it is a knife that is meant to be utilitarian, but those elements are still present. I don't want to, it's not that black and white. It's a mix of both. There's just more design here, right? Normally, I don't like these disc openers, and I feel like over the last 2-3 years, I've been saying that every single time I review one, and then the model that I'm handling, I find out is actually very easy to manipulate, and that's the case here. This runs on caged bearings. The detent is fantastic. Getting leverage off of that brass thumb disc is actually really, really easy. As you can see here, it's very easy to reverse flick it with my middle finger. I wonder if I can even do it with my third finger. Let's try. Can I get it? Yeah, I can. So that's a finger I don't normally use to deploy a knife. I don't think many people use this finger to do this. Obviously, no reason to do that, but the detent is tuned correctly, and this offers the appropriate amount of leverage to get the knife to deploy. I'm really happy with it, and I know that that action inside the pivot will only smooth up. This is already very close to drop shut while being very controlled. I think the detent is just fantastic. Really, really great action there. For what you're left to use. I just wish there was better access to the lock bar. Let's go ahead and do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Pair 3. It is slightly thicker. I want to look here real quick. It gives off the impression of being contoured, but it's not. We can see here the topmost portion is actually flat. So there's no contouring, but man, there's so much of this chamfering here, right? It does actually give off the impression of being contoured. So it is it does fill the hand in a pleasing way. I guess my choice of words there. Length and height up against the PM2 and Pair 3. Because of the body style here, very long and slender. So we have a knife that is definitely longer than the Pair 3. It is approaching the same length as the PM2, but it carries easier. Even being full titanium in terms of like just dimensions, it's just like carrying a long, slender object, right? You're getting a lot of knife for the total amount of object you're carrying in your pocket, even though it is on the heavier side and, being made full titanium and the fact that it's an integral, but it's just not very tall or cumbersome, right? So for somebody like me who likes this size of knife, this length of blade, this was actually really fun to carry. Now, I might be a little biased because I get a lot of joy out of carrying things that are a little bit more designy, right? And especially things that are manufactured by, that are designed by people in the knife community who have a long legacy, and people that I've very much appreciated their designs in the past. So yeah, but it was a joy to carry. This is one of those knives, you get it out, anytime you're about to open your Amazon package or whatever you're about to do with it, and it puts a smile on your face. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. That's definitely the case here. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll plug my tools like I always do. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel and the pinned comment. We're not going to use them today because it's actually a Phillips head. The only usable head on this knife, it's going to be Phillips, which is fine. Most people have access to a Phillips head. Now, the stop pin, funny enough, is screwed in there. I guess that makes sense. But this is an integral knife, so there is no taking it apart. You can remove the pocket clip, you can remove the steel lock bar insert if you want. You shouldn't be doing that. And for some reason, you can remove the stop pin, and then you can get to the pivot and the blade. But outside of adjusting the blade, like the tightness or the centering or whatever, or removing the blade for cleaning the internals like the pivot area, there is no taking it apart. And that's one of the beauties of an integral knife. There's just no fuss. Now, one of these screws does serve, as far as I can tell, as the over travel stop. The other two are purely decorative, right? So some people might say, well, what if those back out? They could, I guess. You could Loctite them in there. You could literally Loctite those in there and never worry about them again, because there would literally be no reason to ever remove them. I don't think they're gonna, it would take so much shock and impact over such a long period of time to get those to back out, right? I guess if you notice it, maybe put some Loctite in there, but these are purely decorative, and there's really no fuss when disassembling the parts of this knife that can be disassembled. It's going to be very, very straightforward and easy. Would I have preferred Torx? Yeah, I think so, because these heads are very thin and it's very narrow, right? You have to get exactly the right size of Phillips head. Otherwise, you risk kind of marring up or screwing up the edges right there. And considering the price and the audience that this is clearly catered to, that might bother some people. So if you find yourself desperately needing to get inside the pivot, I cannot stress this enough, make sure that you have exactly the right size before you do that. Everybody else, you'd probably just be okay. Like you can get like the plastic head, like turners. That might be a good option. I know that those are on Amazon as well. But for the most part, if you really need to get into it, you can get into it. So no issue there. Let's go ahead and weigh it. So we have titanium. According to their page, actually the Knife Center listing, the coating on the titanium, I'm not sure if it's exactly the same, but the blade is listed as DLC, which is pretty cool. We have a titanium frame, obviously, and we have an M390 blade, and there's a lot of those materials. So the weight on this guy is coming in unsurprisingly at, actually I was going to say it was over 5 ounces, 4.83 ounces. Not bad for a full titanium integral that has no real excess milling for weight reduction. Let's measure actually it doesn't need to be out for that. Let's measure the blade stock thickness here real quick. Then we'll move on to the meat and potatoes, my favorite part of the review. Blade stock thickness 150, that would be my guess. Oh, close. 147 thousandths by my measurements, probably 150 or 145, somewhere in there. Alrighty, this is a super cool knife, and I'm a big fan of symmetry, or designs that have a lot of symmetry. It's not perfectly symmetrical. Obviously, this grind is more of a bayonet. Now, they do have a few different blade options. They have, if you want the more performance-oriented blade, you can get one that's like mostly flat ground. I didn't really care about the performance of it. I just really like the look of this. Now, it is not sharp on both sides. I mean, that would be stupid because this is all exposed. So it's going to be sharp on one side no matter what. And a lot of people might point out that line doesn't go all the way out to the tip. That's because the cutting bevel is only on one side. And you can see it's exactly the same on both sides. This is intentional. It is not a manufacturing goof up. That is how that is supposed to look. But the fuller, while it doesn't run down the perfect middle of the blade, it's also not supposed to, because I guess the deeper grind is on one side, or the more lengthy grind is on one side. But that line from the fuller to where the two grinds meet is actually perfectly centered off the tip of that, and it does look very, very good. As far as thickness behind the edge, this particular grind is definitely thicker behind the edge and will not slice in a super duper satisfying way, but it will cut and it will poke, and it'll definitely get into those Amazon packages that most of us are undoubtedly using these types of knives for. If you so choose to take this out and use it harder, like an actual tool, I don't know exactly how comfortable it'll be, right? And I imagine that grind will probably slow you down a little bit, but make no mistake, this is not a purely decorative object, as so many people who are new to knives love to assume about anything that is expensive. There's a whole world of knowledge out there that's just waiting for you to discover it. Much of it can be found right here on my 4,000 upload channel, but seriously, all over the place. If you find yourself assuming that anything over a certain price point in the knife world is purely decorative, that could not be further from the truth. Sometimes there are art knives out there, but in this case, no, this knife is absolutely durable. Not in the sense that you can like pry a bomb shelter out of the ground with it or anything, but in terms of using it like a knife and using it over the next 10 to 20 years of your life, yeah, as long as you're being responsible with it and using it like a tool, like a knife, right? And not a pry bar, jackhammer, screwdriver, anything like that, then yeah, it's absolutely going to hold up. It's very well built. The ergonomic lines here are just straight. I mean, you can hold onto it because it is a shape of object that will fit in your hand, But there's nothing really over the top ergonomic here. They've just made a couple of, heavy chamfered areas to kind of accommodate for your hands. Because the alternative would be that it would be a big rectangle with a rounded end, right? So I think these areas make it slightly more comfortable than it would be. I got to point this out. This is a very Les Georgie pocket clip, but he didn't go down and then way up like on the VECP, right? We went down and slightly up, and that's just about perfect. A lot of people are going to say, hey, whoa, why not a milled titanium clip? I agree, that would have been cool. I think maybe they saved a little money doing that. But this is absolutely titanium, so at least we have that. And functionally, it is a wonderful, wonderful clip. Now, it is only mountable for right-handed people, so keep that in mind. But it's way before the 50% line, which I'm going to say is right there. So if you want to choke back, you want to choke up, it's about as comfortable as it could be. Overall, if I was going to give it a grade for ergonomics, I would say it's a B- to C+. You can hold it, reasonably comfortable, but it's no hand melting experience. Barehanded and using this for continuous cutting over a 30-minute period, which is kind of the standard example I like to use, your hand's probably not going to be feeling super great, right? It's not super accommodating in that sense. But you can hold it, you can use it, right? I would wear gloves if you're going to use it for a long period of time. These lines here absolutely do offer some traction, some realistic traction. There is nothing guarding your finger from riding up on the blade because of the way they design this, right? Some people like to call that poor design work. It's done intentionally because they're trying to achieve this aesthetic, right? So it's not poor design work. It's intentionally done to create a certain aesthetic. The end result is that there's nothing guarding you from running your hands up on the blade. So you have to ask yourself as an individual, how important is that to you? How often are you going to use it? How hard are you going to use it, right? Do you use your knives in a way where you forget where your index finger is in relationship to the initial cutting edge? Do you require a guard? If the answer is yes, then for you, this might not be the right choice. But if you're like me and the hardest tasks that your knives see are generally cardboard, packaging, stuff like that, it doesn't really matter because you're going to be able to hold this in a way and make the cut in a way that's safe and doesn't risk your finger running up on the edge. But that is a factor here, so just be aware of it. Fit and finish all the way around. Absolutely beautiful. Quechuo did a fantastic job with this, and it looks phenomenal. There's nothing here that looks weird or, it doesn't look like out of place. The seating and the hardware is great. The edges of the titanium, everything's finished. Everything's even. The fuller looks great. I love this grind. I think it looks awesome. This DLC finish, if that's actually what it is, and, it does look like it's like a matte polished DLC. It looks really, really good. The blade steel is M390, so it doesn't really need a DLC coating in terms of protecting it from corrosion. M390 is super stain resistant. Obviously, titanium doesn't even need it either, but I do appreciate the black and gold or very dark gray and gold look. I think that's awesome. You can see the Elishewitz and George logo over here, and then on the front side, you can see that logo right there, and that's pretty much it. They went pretty minimal on the billboarding, and I appreciate that. A lot of times when you do white on black, heavy contrast, you can see it pretty easily, but nothing too crazy here. Not really any jimping. I mean, yeah, your finger can kind of lock in on that disc if you hit it at the right edge, but not really. You kind of have to go off to one side. I don't really care that much. The nice thing about that disc is it's a size where there's a lot of like custom discs out there. So if you really want to change this out and make it a different color, you probably could. Pretty easy to access it there. There's really nothing on the back. I always love seeing how companies choose to do the backs of these integrals because there's no backspacer, there's no standoff, right? It's just titanium. I think it looks great. Follows suit for the rest of the design. There's no lanyard hole, doesn't need it. The pocket clip mounts in a close to deep carry position. That's all the more that's going to be peeking up over your pocket. And like I said, in and out of the pocket, it's great. The pocket clip actually rides on a smooth, non-textured surface. Sorry, I'm making sure that that's actually correct. It never feels like, I think maybe the top edges of these lines right here, but in and out of the pocket, it's always been a really smooth experience for me. Very easy to get out and deploy. Steel lock bar insert that actually, let me look here. No, does not double as the over travel stop. It's this guy right here. But we do have that steel lock bar insert, so that's great. We have a stop pin that's located in its traditional position right here. No blade play up, down, left to right, no lock stick, no pivot lash, very smooth and consistent in here. And like I said, a wonderful detent. This is not a knife where I'm going to worry too much about the strength of the frame lock. I feel like Quechua knows how to do this, and obviously Elishewitz and George know what they're doing when they send the information over. So again, as long as you're not trying to unearth a railroad track with your pocket knife, it probably isn't going to disengage. Just remember to put the pressure on the sharp side and you'll be okay. But if you find yourself in one of those wiggly tight spaces where you kind of have to wiggle a knife back out of whatever it was that you're cutting, a little bit of light spine pressure is not going to disengage your knife. So, who is this for? Definitely collectors and enthusiasts. Make no mistake. You can carry and use this knife. It will not be the most practical cutting tool for hardly any situation, but it is fun to carry and definitely functional, durable, well-made, all of that. Very premium. Very competitive price tag, too, considering the space it's in. You cannot measure this knife up against other Chinese folding knives that are simply M390 and titanium. That is not a fair comparison because regular Chinese titanium and M390 knives are not integrals. So if you're going to say, I can get titanium and M390 for $180 or so off Amazon, great, but that's not the same thing. This is an integral. Now, if you don't care about the integral nature of the design, then that means for you, this is not going to be as valuable. However, these factually cost more money to produce. So if we're going to compare apples to apples, you have to compare it with another Chinese titanium and M390 integral. And the least expensive of those out there usually are just a hair shy of 400, slightly under. I know in a few cases it's a little bit less, but in this case, we have something pretty complicated, like machining wise, pretty impressive. The coatings, the colors. Yeah, I wish it had a milled pocket clip, but all in all, I'm really impressed. And considering the big names that are on this, man, I would have guessed that it would have been 450 plus, realistically. I have no problem with this price tag. I honestly think this is a great price tag for this knife. But again, specifically for people who are collectors and enthusiasts first and like to periodically use these knives and carry them right, for fun. It'll make a decent EDC knife, but it's not going to be winning any awards in the utility department. It's just really freaking cool. If I was going to give it an award, I'd give it the really freaking cool award. This is definitely, easily one of my favorite knives that I've reviewed on this channel, and I have a playlist reserved for those specific knives called My Favorite Knives of All Time. This is absolutely going in that playlist. I love this. It's staying in my collection permanently. I just think it's really, really cool. I think a lot of people will be turned off by the fact that, number one, we have Phillips head brass screws contrasting with the black. They may not like that. I think other people might be turned off by the fact that we have two screws that are completely useless. That's going to bother some people, right? And other people that might be bothered by the fact that it's not the most beautifully ergonomic thing or the most beautifully cutting performance oriented thing in the whole world. I think that's perfectly fine. A lot of people will be quick to point out that the top pivot or the top screw is not symmetrical with these two. It's being positioned like that so that the blade operates correctly with the leverage that's created by the thumb disc. But I can understand why some people might not like that on a design that is mostly symmetrical. So I get that. If you can overlook those things like I did, I don't really care about that stuff. I love the look. I don't care about the two useless screws. You will really like this. But if certain elements bother you, it might not be for you. Either way, I think the price tag on this is excellent. I think the quality is excellent. I think they did a really good job. Please do more stuff like this. This is so cool. If you guys are willing, Elishewitz and George, if you guys are willing to work with Quechua and other companies, oh my good, I can't wait to see what you guys do in the future. I think that this is just spectacular. Really cool stuff. So, favorite knives of all time playlist, absolutely, but not a knife I'm going to recommend to everybody. That's going to be it today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody. and have a great day.